the key to being a good investor is to invest before everybody else does. So like I invested in Bitcoin when everybody was saying it's a scam and a Ponzi scheme and this and that, and they were $1 each. But I didn't listen to the naysayers. I thought for myself. I thought, no, Bitcoin enables fast, cheap, reliable payments anywhere in the world. People are going to use this as money. I'm going to invest in it before everybody else does. And sure enough, the price of Bitcoin went crazy. And so today it's the same thing. Bitcoin Cash is fast, cheap, reliable, and provides a better user experience than the BTC version of Bitcoin. And a lot of people on the internet are saying Bcash is a scam, Bcash is trash, Bcrash, and just a bunch of name calling. But like, name calling is not an argument.
Hello and welcome to the Who's Going to Stop Me podcast. Join us on an exciting journey to the depths of the human mind and soul of those who have been successful, of those who have been maybe where you want to go. I promise you one thing and one thing only by listening to this podcast, and that is a life that is more full, that is more exciting, and that will bring you more fulfillment. This episode is a Bitcoin special featuring CEO of Bitcoin.com, Roger Ver. Roger Ver is one of the world's earliest investors in Bitcoin. He got involved in 2011. Not only that, he's invested in Bitcoin startups including Blockchain.com, Z.Cash, BitPay, Kraken, Purse.io. He's well known for his controversial and libertarian views. His story is absolutely incredible. I've been fortunate enough to work alongside Roger at Bitcoin.com for a brief period of time, getting to know that his passion, his love for cryptocurrencies, and his love to bring economic freedom to the world is completely sincere. So, sit back, listen to this episode. We talk about Bitcoin, we talk about why Roger holds the views that he does. At the start of this episode, I do a special segment just for you on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and what makes them so special. So, enjoy. Don't forget, we appreciate your reviews, we love your comments, so if you do take something from this episode, head over to iTunes and leave us a review. Thank you very much. Hello guys, so thank you for listening to the podcast again. I appreciate it. Thank you for all your rad reviews and comments. I'm actually recording this special solo part right off the top of this episode because the interview with Roger is it's a tad bit shorter, and I want to cover some of the basics of both Roger Ver's story, because I think there's some important parts. Although, we had 45-minute conversation, we miss out on some really interesting things that will give you context as well to why he's talking about some of these things about Bitcoin and the government, etc. And also to introduce you more to the wonderful world of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and the technology and how it works and the challenges, because I think that's what's really going to add massive value to this episode. So if that all sounds good, I'm going to just crack on into this and start talking about Bitcoin. So what is Bitcoin? Okay, there are many different... I got loads of questions before this episode, like, is Bitcoin a scam? What is Bitcoin? Should I still invest in Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin an investment? So one thing you have to understand is that Bitcoin it's a piece of software, essentially. It's a software protocol that was designed in 2008 by an anonymous software developer going by the name, insert spooky background music, Satoshi Nakamoto. And he proposed Bitcoin in 2008 as an electronic payment system based on mathematical proof. Satoshi saw many problems with the traditional finance system after the banking crisis of 2008, when lots of investment banks and lots of retail banks caused a huge disruption in our economy because of the way they were manipulating money. And so Satoshi took a look at this and he thought, you know what, there has to be a better way where money isn't controlled by a central figure, a central authority, whether that is a central bank, whether that is the government. Money needs to be neutral and not interfered with. So he created Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, but there are also many other things you can do with cryptocurrencies. The easiest way for me to explain Bitcoin is like this. Okay, imagine, the US dollar, euros, the yen, any currency you want, Canadian dollars, any currency you want. Bitcoin is essentially another currency, but it's a digital currency. How is it important? How is it different rather than, say, the US dollar? There is probably 3 or 4 key points that make it different. One of the most important points, and one of the things you always hear about Bitcoin, is that it's decentralized. We have this decentralized blockchain technology. No one actually understands what that means, right? Unless you really dig into it. One of the most important characteristics of Bitcoin is that it is decentralized. And that means that no single institution controls the network. It is an open network that uses computers spread all around the world. What this means is that no one can print more money. Now, while you get governments like, the US government or whoever, and you have central bank, what they actually do every single year is they inflate the money supply. Sometimes it's by 1%, sometimes it's more than that. And what inflation does, okay, just for those people who maybe don't understand the term inflation, is they literally, before they would print more dollars, but now because so much money is electronic, they actually just add an extra zero on their computerized system and creates more dollars. Now you might think, oh, why does that matter? It's not such a big deal. I don't mind if the government, I trust the government wholeheartedly. They're fantastic. The issue is, if you go down to your local store and you want to buy 6 eggs, those 6 eggs, let's say, are worth $1 today. But if the government prints more money and there's more money circulating, those 6 eggs aren't, you're not going to get 7 eggs magically, but somehow you get $1.20 per 6 eggs now, because you've increased the money supply. So there's more money, but the eggs have stayed the same. And what happens is, this means that next year you go and you pay for eggs and you pay $1.20 for 6 eggs. Very simple example, but it means that the money that you have is worth less because the government prints more to use as they see fit, which means it devalues your money over time. So $1.20 for 6 eggs might not cause you a huge problem, but if you look at countries like Venezuela and a lot of African countries, their economies have absolutely been destroyed because of inflation. Because once you hit that point of no return, 6 eggs becomes worth $1 million, for example, which it is in some places, which is like Venezuela right now. They can't even use the currency because it is so inflated. It's essentially worthless. We're not at that point in westernized countries or Western countries, but decentralization means that every single person that actually wants to run that, remember we spoke about that computer software, because the underlying protocol of Bitcoin, they can run that computer software on their computer. They can verify transactions on the Bitcoin network, and that means that no central person holds control of the network. So that's one very important element, is decentralization. A second really important part is limited supply. So we spoke about inflation, increasing the money supply, limited supply. So there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoins. Now they haven't all been released yet. They're released over time. Essentially, yes, we have a limited supply, and that means that the value of each Bitcoin, in theory, should go up as it becomes more valuable. The next thing is that it's pseudonymous. Okay, so it's basically anonymous. A lot of people thought Bitcoin was anonymous when it originally came out in the first few years, but it's actually not anonymous. I mean, it's a public ledger. Again, a really simple way I want you to think about Bitcoin is this. We spoke about that, these decentralized networks. So this is, when I say decentralized, computers all over the world, have this database of transactions. That is what this decentralized protocol is. In very simplified terms, is all these computers have this centralized database, and they update essentially together. I mean, there's this idea of Bitcoin mining, which I don't really want to go into, but it's essentially how transactions are validated on the network. People that have servers that run these complex mathematical algorithms that verify transactions on the network, and when they're verified, it sends out those verifications to the other people, other computers around the world, who then also verify the transaction, and then it's included in a block. And so this database is essentially made up of blocks, hence blockchain, because it's a chain of blocks. That's where this whole blockchain technology comes from. But in essence, each user has an address. Okay, it's like your wallet. If you store US dollars in your wallet, you have a wallet to store your Bitcoin. So each wallet has an address. Now, if you don't tell anyone this address belongs to me, it can pretty much be anonymous unless someone figures it out. It's not completely anonymous. The database is public, because that's part of the magic of Bitcoin, is that everyone can see that it's not been manipulated and it could be verified independently. But if people figure out the addresses, your address, then it's not anonymous, because they can see where you've moved your Bitcoin and what addresses it's gone to, etc., etc. So so far, let's just recap. We've got it's decentralized, meaning no one controls it. It's a limited supply, 21 million. It's pseudonymous, so it's kind of anonymous, but not really. All the information is public. And there are tools that certain cryptocurrencies and computer programmers are working on to make it more anonymous. You can shuffle transactions and stuff like that, but essentially it is not anonymous. It's a transparent network, so people can see the transactions that happen. But it's not like your name is on it. It's your address of your wallet, which it's difficult to figure out who that address belongs to unless it's been publicly stated. And number 4 is immutability. Bitcoin transactions cannot be reversed. Once a transaction happens, that's it. It's like, when you pay for something and you're like, oh, actually, I don't want to buy this anymore, and you call your credit card company and then they refund you. You cannot do that with Bitcoin. That's because there's no central authority that can says, okay, cancel that, return the money. And while that sounds like a negative thing, if you're buying something, it's actually really, really important, because it's like, it's important because if you own a shop, let's say you run PayPal, you accept PayPal, or that you want to buy something, you go abroad and you want to buy something. How many times have you had this happen to you, where you go to pay for something and it's your money, you've earned it, and sorry, funds are not available. Oh, your card has been declined. So immutability is actually really, really important. It means that once a transaction is made, it cannot be reversed. Once it's included in that block, that block that we mentioned before that make up this database, it cannot be reversed. So that's very important and very powerful. It means there's no manipulation of the system. And the fifth character trait is divisibility, which means you can split each Bitcoin down into the smallest unit, which is called a Satoshi, which is 1/100th million of a Bitcoin. So those are the 5 traits that I think are very important. Decentralized, has a limited supply, it's pseudonymous, it's immutable, and it's divisible. So that's amazing, right? We've got this brand new digital currency that you can send, you can receive, and it's brilliant. Now, you may be like, okay, I get it. That's Bitcoin. Wow, that sounds amazing. There are many challenges with Bitcoin. As you know, it's been very volatile. The idea of Bitcoin was always to be an electronic payment system. Let me say that again, an electronic payment system. If there's huge volatility in the price, one day it's $5,000, a month later it's $10,000, then it's back to $5,000. People aren't going to use something to pay for something if it's going to cost them twice as much, or they're going to lose money doing it. For example, if I paid for a coffee when it was $10,000 and then it goes up to $20,000, I've essentially paid double for the coffee because if I waited, that money would have gone up. So this is, and I don't want to get off topic because I want to really focus on those interesting bits for you guys. People have come up with this mindset of like hodler. I'm going to hodl my Bitcoins and instead of spend them, because they think it's going to go up over time. So the volatility is a big issue. They've got to figure out a way, if we're going to use this as currency, how are we going to make this more stable? Number 2 is electricity. At the moment, Bitcoin uses a hell of a lot of power, because remember we spoke about those computers that are decentralized around the world. They use a lot of electricity to power the network to verify these transactions. And there's a lot of duplication going on. Lots of computers are trying to solve the same mathematical problem because they're competing. These Bitcoin mining computers are competing for a reward. So in essence, you got a lot of duplication going on, which causes a lot of electricity to be used by these servers and computers trying to figure out these problems to claim the Bitcoin reward. So it uses a hell of a lot of electricity. I think somewhere I read that it was using the same amount of electricity as like the country of Finland or something along those lines. So it's a lot. Now, a lot of people are saying, yeah, but we're becoming better at using all these wonderful methods of renewable energy and everything's going to be fixed. Okay, but we're not right now, and there are lots of problems with the climate that are happening. So how are we going to address those? Third challenge is adoption. Retailers, it's a new thing. There's been so much press about it. Is it a scam? What is Bitcoin? So it's risky. Oh, it's lost 90% of its net value. Don't get involved with it. All these ideas have caused there to be some bad press. So naturally, some retailers and businesses are reluctant to accept it. And if you can't accept it, it lowers its usefulness in my eyes. So if adoption doesn't happen by retailers, is it really worth the same amount? So I would say those are the main challenges. And then right now, one of the biggest challenges is this idea of scalability. If every store in the world accepted Bitcoin and everyone had a Bitcoin wallet on their mobile phone, there isn't enough throughput to handle the amount of transactions per second that it would need to right now. It just can't handle that many transactions per second. Visa can handle thousands and thousands of transactions per second. Bitcoin can maybe only handle, 20, 30, 40 a second or something like that. So it's very limited. Someone will probably correct me and go, Michael, no, it can only handle 16.3 transactions per second. But you get the point. So that's Bitcoin. Now, cryptocurrencies, you're probably like, well, what about Ethereum? What about EOS? What about Litecoin? What about Bitcoin Cash? That's okay. How do I explain this? There's Bitcoin, which is meant to be a cryptocurrency, i.e. like the US dollar, it's a digital currency that you're meant to be able to spend and use as money. And then there are other blockchains that have been created for other reasons. The other reason being so that they can handle smart, decentralized applications. So they can handle decentralized applications. So you can actually build on top of these decentralized networks and create really interesting, like either games or applications or other things where all those character traits and characteristics that I named before are really useful. Like if you want to really trust someone, let's say you're buying a property, but you don't know whether or not you should send the money first or they give you the deeds to the property. You can design a piece of software where you automatically create that exchange using cryptocurrencies so that it's trustless, so that you don't have to just go, okay, I'm sending the money and I just hope I'm going to get the deed to the property. It's all validated. So there are a lot of people building on top of this idea of blockchain technology. There's Ethereum, which is very popular. There's EOS, which is very popular. And then you've got other cryptocurrencies like Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash, which are essentially vying for that spot of top cryptocurrency, i.e. to be used as money. Where Roger got involved in 2011, which is way before I did and which is way before most people did. Roger believes in Bitcoin Cash because he believes in its ability to subvert and overthrow and take power away from bad governments, state governments. He's had many bad experiences in his life, which has pointed to the fact that they are evil and they are doing really bad things in the world. War, atrocities, taxes are all things that Roger Ver is very, very strongly against. He supported Bitcoin. In 2011, he got involved, which is the best part of this decade, which is 8-9 years now. And eventually Bitcoin hit that moment in 2017 where remember I spoke about the throughput of transactions. It had hit its maximum. People were sending it from exchanges to their wallets, and everyone was saying it's time to increase the block size from 1 megabyte, which it had been limited to like 2 megabytes, 3 megabytes, 4 megabytes, 8 megabytes, because we need to start scaling this as cash for the world. There were some people, developers on Bitcoin, that said, actually, no, we want to limit it and focus on building the Lightning Network, which is essentially a scaling solution on top of the Bitcoin network protocol. Now, Roger and several other people said, no, I disagree. I think the software is great as it is. We don't need to build anything on top of it. We just need to change the cap on the block size. And so Roger and several other people, strong advocates of increasing the block size, forked. So you can actually take this original piece of software, duplicate it. It's not exactly duplication, but I'm simplifying. But duplicate it, call it something else, and start your own chain. And that's what they did. They said they created Bitcoin Cash. Yeah, so someone else, it wasn't Roger that actually forked it. Roger isn't a computer programmer. He's more focused on the economic side. He's more of a marketer. But some developers, I'm not 100% sure who it was. It might have been Amaury Sachet of Bitcoin ABC or Peter Rising of Bitcoin Unlimited. It was a developer essentially that wanted a bigger block size, forked Bitcoin to create Bitcoin Cash, and that's what Roger's been working on ever since. And the main difference is Bitcoin Cash has a bigger block size, and they believe that Bitcoin Cash should be used as cash today, now. Let's increase the transactions. Let's get this movement going. Bitcoin supporters, a lot of them believe that actually the Bitcoin network should be limited, the block size, and we want to build on top of it and build innovative solutions like the Lightning Network, which is unproven technology. We don't really know how it works. There's a lot of huge, really difficult, challenging problems that the Lightning Network has to solve before it becomes usable. So that is essentially... Wow, I think I talked for way longer than I expected to talk on this. I hope that's useful for all of you. We're going to jump into the interview in a second. Let me just tell you a little bit about Roger. So Roger was actually arrested. This is one part of the story that I wanted to get into and highlight, because some of you will be like, oh, he talks about being arrested, but we don't explain that. Roger was arrested. He sold firecrackers, which was for pest control, on eBay. Now, at this time, this was when eBay was relatively new. People were selling all sorts of things on their guns. You name it, people would be selling them on there. And it was a pest control device, I believe, that acted as an explosive firecracker. And so he was taken to court, he was convicted, and he spent 6 months in prison for selling these firecrackers on eBay. At the time, Roger was a very outspoken advocate against some government authorities and government figures. So I'm in no position to comment on this, okay? But he believes that he was targeted for his outspoken views and really being he was running for the Libertarian Party, and so he's very outspoken against some of this bullshit he believed he saw in government, and so he thinks he was targeted and put away because of that. And that led him to renouncing his US citizenship. He's now a citizen of St Kitts and Nevis, which is an island in the Caribbean. He splits his time between St Kitts and also Tokyo, where he has an office at Bitcoin.com. Roger is very passionate. He's such a passionate person. He believes in economic freedom for everyone. He fights for the poorest people in the world, people that have been absolutely demolished by bombs dropping on their country, war-torn countries that have been destroyed by poverty and inflation. He's really outspoken, and every time he gives a speech, that's his number one goal. And I've seen him move to tears before. People like to pick on him and say, oh, he's a scammer and Roger's just pumping Bitcoin Cash to make money. That is not Roger. I've met Roger. I've worked with Roger. That is not him. Roger really believes in Bitcoin Cash's ability to bring economic freedom to the world. And that is why he got involved in cryptocurrencies in the first place. I know he cares for Bitcoin Cash because that is what he believes has the best ability to bring this economic freedom to the world. But I know that if something better came along, he would also support that because that's his main goal. That's why he's a controversial figure. I don't think there's anything that he says that we wouldn't agree on. We want economic freedom for the world. We want to help the poorest people in the world. We want to have a better world for everyone. So enjoy the interview. I hope you take something away from it, and I'd love to hear your comments. Don't forget to leave a review, and here we go. Thanks for listening in. I hope you learned something from that. You have an incredible backstory, and the more I worked with you when I did work for Bitcoin.com, the more I learned the I guess the levels to your entrepreneurial journey and like how that's kind of molded your worldview. So just as maybe an introduction for people that don't know your story, could you give us like an overview of where you've come from and how you ended up today as the CEO of Bitcoin.com, interested in libertarianism? How did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, to sum up my 40 years of a journey to where I am today. I was born and raised in Silicon Valley, and everybody feels like the place they grew up with is just normal to them. But, now as an adult, I realize that Silicon Valley is a bit of a special place. And in the, around the time I was turning 20, the dot-com bubble was bursting. And there were all these companies that were going bankrupt in Silicon Valley. And they were selling off all of their computer hardware that they had been using in those businesses for, pennies on the dollars. If people would show up with cash in hand, they'd, were auctioning it off, and you could get some really amazing deals. So started out just wanting a new hard drive for my own computer. And I went to one of these, going out of business sales, and then saw that these hard drives that they were selling for $100 each. I still remember very, very clearly. They were 9 gigabyte SCSI hard drives, and they were selling them for $100 each. But those same exact model hard drives were selling on eBay for almost $400 each. And this is on eBay back before there was PayPal. People were literally sending postal money orders in the mail to pay for things on eBay back in the day. And so I started buying these hard drives and reselling them on eBay, and buying more and more other computer parts and selling them on eBay. And a business was born. But one of the biggest pain points for that business were the payments, because sending postal money orders in the mail is not a very convenient way to pay for things online. And I had, eventually I was able to accept credit cards, but I got to see firsthand just what a giant headache it is accepting credit cards, with people trying to pay with stolen credit cards or chargebacks or all sorts of things, or international, payment fraud with credit cards. It's a really risky business to be able to accept credit cards for payment for things on the internet, especially back in like the year 1999 or 2000 or 2001 when I was getting started. And then the other big pain point in my business, I was busy trying to keep all my customers happy and ship them their product on time and get everybody taken care of. Yet the government was making all these demands of me that I keep track of all these little things and, fill out all sorts of paperwork for them and get permission for this and permission for that and send them money every month to people that I'd never met in Sacramento or Washington, D.C. And it was, distracting me from actually being able to take care of my customers and actually run my business. And before that, I had read all sorts of economics books. My hobby had been studying economics, and you read about how government intervention into the economy slows down the rate of economic growth and makes it harder for entrepreneurs to, make the world a better place. So I got to see philosophically, or theoretically rather, in these economics books, the effects of government intervention in the economy. And then with my own business, I got to see firsthand that the effects are real, and the drag on the economy is real. And I got to see it with my own life firsthand. Uh, and so I guess all of these things kind of coming together, made me more and more of a libertarian, and seeing the pain points of paying for things online, because I, ran an e-commerce business for 15 years before I got involved in Bitcoin, selling computer parts to help scale enterprise grade networks. So I was selling, mainly optical transceivers and Cisco routers and switches and things like that. And then when Bitcoin came along, it had all the things I loved. It solved a real problem for me in my real life, which was online payments for anything on the internet. And then it had this ability to bring more economic freedom to the world, and unshackle businesses from a lot of these stupid regulatory burdens that are imposed by governments that slow down the entire world's rate of economic growth. And it undermined the ability of governments to control people and control the economy and control what people are doing with their own money. So it was just everything I had ever wanted or loved in the world was all rolled up into one in the form of Bitcoin. So, of course, I was going to drop everything else I was doing in my life and focus on promoting Bitcoin as money for the world, so that people could start using it for payments to buy and sell whatever it is they wanted anywhere in the world. And here we are as we're recording this now. It's been about 8.5 years full time of my life doing nothing but promoting the adoption of peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world.
I know that along that journey there, you described it in very succinctly, which I'm sure you're used to doing. But I know that there were many different kind of obstacles and other exciting things that happened along the way. But yeah, it's a great summary of your story. So
Yeah,
for
if I
those
can
people,
recommend, if people want a more detailed summary, a man named Nathaniel Popper for the New York Times wrote a book called Digital Gold, and he did a really really good job summing up a lot of the things that were happening early in the Bitcoin ecosystem and development. And even for someone who lived through it like that, I found the book to be a real page turner and was really really well done. So it's called Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper.
one of the stories that I remember hearing was about when you discovered Bitcoin, and I thought, wow, okay, that's very Roger. So what kind of happened when you first found out about Bitcoin? It was 2012, am I right?
No, this
No,
was February of 2011.
2011. Sorry,
Yeah.
2011. Wow. Okay, so the best part of a decade. So what happened when you found out about Bitcoin? What was like your thought process, and yeah, like what was that discovery like for you?
So I was back visiting, California, and I still had my business selling computer parts, there. And I was, at that point I still had a home in California, so I was at that home eating breakfast and intending to go to my office that day to, help sell some more computer parts around the world and run the company. Um, but while I was eating breakfast, I was listening to a libertarian podcast or radio show called Free Talk Live. And interestingly enough, one of the hosts of that show is visiting me here in Tokyo this moment. I'll have lunch with him later today. But on that show, they mentioned Bitcoin in reference to the Silk Road, and that people were using, they were using this website called the Silk Road to buy and sell drugs. And I've never been interested in drugs. I wasn't interested in the drugs one bit, but I thought, well, what the heck kind of money could they possibly be using for this? Because I know what a pain it is to pay for things on the internet. So what kind of money could they possibly be using to buy and sell illegal drugs on the internet? So while I was having breakfast, I Googled the Silk Road and looked into that and saw that they were using this money called Bitcoin. And I thought, well, what is Bitcoin? So I Googled Bitcoin. And then when I started to understand the concept of Bitcoin is that there's a limited supply, and at that time, you could send and receive them anywhere in the world instantly for free. And there wasn't anything anybody could do to stop it. The only way to stop Bitcoin would be to turn off the entire internet and the entire world and keep it turned off. And I knew without any doubt in my mind, from reading all the theoretical explanations of the origin of money in my economics books that I had spent a lot of time studying, and then from my practical experience seeing the microeconomy in federal prison, which is a whole other story. I did 10 months in federal prison, and I got to see firsthand within the prison how things just naturally become used as money. So things that are easily recognizable, easily durable, easily transportable, you can't counterfeit them. All those things naturally become used as money. So examples of that are, of course, tobacco, postage stamps, and top ramen soups. And most importantly, all those things have to have some secondary use case outside of just being used as money, right? Um, and so I saw from the practical evidence or the empirical evidence right before my eyes there, and then the theoretical evidence from all the books, I knew there was absolutely no doubt in my mind at all that people were going to start using Bitcoin as money around the world. So the first step was to buy some Bitcoin, and the next step was to start investing in the businesses to make it easier for normal people to use Bitcoin. But I became so incredibly excited about this because that's one of the big problems in the world we have is that government has complete lockdown and control of the money supply, and everything that anybody gets to do with any sort of money at all, government controls that. And that's hindering the entire human species rate of progress and advancement. And so now suddenly with the invention of Bitcoin, I saw that we have this tool to separate money from the state and to separate the state's ability to control, money across the planet, not just in one country, but for every human being on the planet. So I got so excited about this that I didn't go to my office that day. I just stayed home and read about Bitcoin the entire day and stayed up all night that night until like the next afternoon reading about Bitcoin. And I'm someone who really needs to get my sleep. If I don't get my sleep, I feel horrible. But I stayed up all night until the next afternoon reading about Bitcoin. And then I just went to sleep for maybe an hour, hour and a half because I was so excited. I woke back up again after a little over an hour and started reading about Bitcoin again. And I stayed up all night the next night until maybe sometime the next, early, like mid morning, maybe 10 a.m. or so. And I went to sleep again for maybe only an hour and a half and then woke up again and read more about Bitcoin. And that went on for about a whole week. And after a whole week I didn't leave my house for a week. I just stayed home reading about Bitcoin and barely sleeping at all. And, literally didn't leave the house for about a week there. And after about a week of that, I got so sick from lack of sleep. And I couldn't even drive myself to the hospital. I had to call one of my friends and say, help me, please take me to the hospital. And, my really good friend was nice enough. He came and drove over to my house and then picked me up and took me to the hospital where they gave me some sort of a sedative or something like that. And then he brought me home and I went to sleep. I probably slept for 18 hours straight or something like that. But then I woke up again and it was more Bitcoin. And it's been all Bitcoin all day, every day for, 8.5 years now. And a lot of people are confused between the differences between what everyone's calling Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. But the idea or the concept that I got so excited about 8.5 years ago is Bitcoin Cash. It's not the thing that everybody's calling Bitcoin today. And the speech that I started giving about Bitcoin back in 2011 is still completely true of Bitcoin Cash today. It's no longer even remotely true of the thing that everybody's calling Bitcoin today. So the thing everyone's calling Bitcoin today, yeah, maybe it has the Bitcoin name, but it's not the idea or the vision of peer-to-peer cash for the world to increase the amount of economic freedom for the world and improve people's lives across the planet. That version of Bitcoin today is Bitcoin Cash, and that's why I'm so excited about Bitcoin Cash today and busy promoting Bitcoin Cash.
Just for maybe the absolute beginners and people who are just listening to this podcast and maybe they don't know anything about Bitcoin Cash, or digital currencies. How would you describe it in layman's terms for those people? Because before we were recording this podcast, I put it out on Instagram. I'm interviewing Roger. What are the things that you want answered? And I got this sense like a lot of people were like, it's confusing. I don't really know what it is. So could you just break it down for us in layman's terms?
Sure. So I think a good example for anybody that's new to this and listening, if I had sit here, and explained how email worked technically for a whole half hour and explained there's these different servers around the world and they use the SMTP protocol, which stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, to send the email from one server to this and that, and it's authenticated in this way, and there's a timestamp for this, people think, oh my God, how am I ever going to figure out how to use this? Whereas if you go and actually use email and send and receive some email from a Gmail account, it's super easy. It's not hard, and you don't have to know all the technical underpinnings. And the same is true of cryptocurrencies. Go and actually use them. It's not nearly as hard as it sounds. But for those that want to know a little bit more as to why Bitcoin Cash is so much more exciting than PayPal, or why any of these digital currencies are so much more interesting than Barclays or Bank of America or Visa. You can think of Bitcoin Cash or any of these peer-to-peer electronic cash systems. Your Bank of America or your PayPal or whatever company that's doing payments, they have a ledger that keeps track of who has how much money in what account. And that ledger's on one computer or maybe a couple of computers at their data center somewhere. And because it's on only, one or maybe a couple of computers at one data center there, at any point, the government can go to that company and say, freeze Roger's account or freeze Michael's account or undo this transaction or block that transaction or do whatever it is the heck the politicians want to have done. Or the company can do it themselves because they're scared of whatever, rules the politicians have set. And there's nothing that the users of that platform can do. Their account's frozen, their transactions undone, their transactions are blocked. And there's nothing that they can do to stop this control of their account in any way. Whereas with Bitcoin Cash, instead of there being one computer that keeps track of who has what money and what account, there's thousands of computers across the planet that all keep track of this ledger, and all those computers update in sync with each other. So it's you've heard about this word called a blockchain. Well, that sounds confusing, but all a blockchain is there's blocks of transactions, and a new batch of transactions is called a block, and that's added to the chain of all the previous transactions that are linked mathematically. And a new block of transactions is added to the blockchain every 10 minutes on average on Bitcoin Cash. And it just includes all the transactions that happened since the previous block. And anybody, any of these thousands of computers around the world can verify that entire chain of custody of all these Bitcoins on the Bitcoin Cash network. And because it's on thousands of computers around the world, there's no place that any government can go to say, block this transaction or undo that transaction or freeze this account or do that. If you're using a wallet in which you have the private keys yourself, and all that means is basically you have the keys to your account. And a Bitcoin.com wallet, of course, is a fantastic example of it. Coinbase is a fantastic service, but it's not a wallet. It's a bank account just like your normal bank account where they're holding the cryptocurrency for you. The Bitcoin.com wallet is like your wallet in your pocket where you have the dollar bills or the pounds or the euros in your pocket and you have complete control. And anyhow, if you have an actual wallet, there's nothing anybody in the entire world can do to stop you from sending or receiving that money with anyone else anywhere in the world. And that's really, really exciting for all of humankind because it empowers people to, have more control over their own lives, and more control over their own lives means more economic growth, and more economic growth means a higher standard of living for everybody, rich and poor alike in every country. So we literally have this tool to improve the lives of every single human being on the planet. That's really, really, really exciting.
That's definitely something that I've heard you say, and that I really like about you is your motives and your drive to increase Bitcoin Cash adoption specifically. It comes from wanting to help improve the world for everyone, right? Bring economic freedom to the world. And so that for me is very inspiring, and is one of the reasons that I've been drawn to you. And I think it's very clear when you give speeches. For me, it's mind-boggling that you have these critics that say like, oh, Roger Ver is a scammer, Roger Ver is doing this, because it's so clear in all the talks you've given, all the events that you've helped sponsor, that you are actually trying to help people, poor people around the world, but not, rich and poor alike, to, just have a better world. So for me, it's kind of mind boggling when I hear people talk smack about you in these really weird, like poorly researched ways.
What's also mind-boggling that people say the same sort of things about, Julian Assange or Edward Snowden. Like the U.S. government literally has been talking about wanting to execute Julian Assange for telling the American people what their own tax dollars are being spent on. Like, what kind of crazy world are we living in which people being told what their tax dollars are being spent on by somebody, then the same government wants to execute that person, murder, right, that person, and then a bunch of these other stupid Americans are saying, yeah, let's murder him. Like, that's just mind-boggling to me, but that's the world we live in. So some people think Bitcoin Cash is a scam. That's mind-boggling to me too, but that's the world we live in. It's probably the same people that think Edward Snowden and Julian Assange should be executed too.
Right. And let's talk about this a little bit, because I wanted to, you've been very outspoken about Bitcoin and being used as a tool to stop wars and stop, evil, quote unquote, evil governments, right? From kind of just controlling the money supply and things like this. So how would using Bitcoin, for someone who's listening to this and then maybe like, I get it's a digital currency, but how would me using Bitcoin Cash stop, or help improve economic freedom and like stop wars and these sorts of things?
Yeah, my thought and hope is that if we can make it so incredibly easy for people to disobey government's bad laws, and it'll make it so difficult for government to enforce their bad laws that they'll just be mass non-compliant. So like a great example of this is like almost everybody wants there to be, schools and roads and bridges. And you don't have to force anybody to pay for, schools and roads and bridges and hospitals and things like that people want. People will gladly pay for that. Most people won't voluntarily pay to drop bombs on people in countries that they've never been to and they're never going to go to. Yet governments currently force people to pay for all sorts of things like that. Well, what if we made it really, really, really difficult for governments to be able to force people to pay for things they don't want to force for? Maybe fewer bombs would be dropped on people in countries that most of us are never going to go to anyhow. And I'm sure the people in those countries would appreciate having fewer bombs dropped on them and having, less money being, stolen from people to pay for those bombs. And cryptocurrencies I see as a way to do that. So like anytime, anywhere in the free market, anybody buys or sells anything with anybody, both people are better off or the trade wouldn't happen. When you buy a TV from your local TV store, the TV store is better off or they wouldn't sell the TV to you because they value the money that you're giving them more than they value the TV. And you wouldn't buy the TV from them if you didn't value the TV more than the money you're giving them. So you're richer and the TV store is richer after you make the trade, or the trade wouldn't happen. So why is it that government's going around and having to force people to pay for all sorts of things? Well, if you didn't feel richer after giving the money to the government, they wouldn't have to force you to do those things if you felt richer voluntarily doing that. So like I think almost everybody doesn't feel better off after having paid to drop a bomb on some kid in some foreign country. Yet the government's going around forcing them to do that. So if in the free market, everybody's better off after every trade. In the coerced market, one side's going to be poorer after the trade, and the world's economy as a whole is worse off. So you're literally slowing down the entire world's rate of economic growth by having this government's, violent intervention into the marketplace. So the more voluntary interaction we can have in the world, the richer and safer and better off the entire world becomes for everybody. And so I want to see the tools built to enable people to say no to other people that want to use coercion to force them to do things with their money that they might not want to do otherwise. And at Bitcoin.com, we're all about building those tools to empower individuals to have complete control over their own money. And even if it's not with their words to say no, with their actions, they get to say no to the people that want to violently interject themselves into the financial affairs of others. So we're busy building those tools at Bitcoin.com.
And would you say that Bitcoin is on the radar of a lot of these governments who may be more totalitarian or just, kind of evil governments in themselves, that it's on their radar? And is there any way that they can stop Bitcoin, or do you think they've already kind of begun this process of trying to kind of affect how it's adopted and how it's viewed? What's your view there?
So if you were the powers that be and you wanted to stop Bitcoin from being adopted by people all over the world and giving people this tool to say no to governments and to say no, I own myself, I run my own life, thank you very much. The best way you could possibly do that would be to make it too expensive to use and too complicated to use for normal people. And if you look at what's happened to the BTC version of Bitcoin, that's exactly what happened. An average transaction at the moment is around $4 on the Bitcoin BTC network, and nobody wants to pay an extra $4. And if you want to use it, everybody's all the rage about the Lightning Network. If you want to actually use the Lightning Network where you're in charge of the money yourself, you basically need a computer science degree to do it, and you need to spend all day setting it up. So they've successfully made Bitcoin too expensive and too complicated for people to be able to use in a self-sovereign manner, and to where now people are just busy using custodian type accounts, just like your normal bank account with Bank of America or Santander or whatever bank account people are using, whatever country. And so that's why I'm such a big fan of Bitcoin Cash, because the fees are a 20th of a cent, and you can start using it in less than 30 seconds, and you don't have to have any sort of computer science background at all. You literally just download an app to your phone and you can start using it. And so if you wanted to disrupt the adoption of this technology around the world, what happened to Bitcoin, the BTC version of Bitcoin, is the exact strategy that somebody should have taken. They made it slow, expensive, and unreliable, and too difficult for people to use in a trustless manner. And so I guess kudos to the people that hijacked that project. And the really sad and frustrating part is that they managed to do that in a way where like the vast majority of people don't even realize that that's what happened. and lots of people are cheering for it. And then the people like myself that are still cheering for peer-to-peer electronic cash that anyone can use anywhere in the world permissionlessly, they claim that we're the ones attacking Bitcoin, and when it's the exact opposite. And the most effective propaganda is the propaganda that they get people to actually believe, and that seems to be what happened with the BTC version of Bitcoin.
You've been very outspoken about Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and there's like a relatively new fork of Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, and some people may be listening to this and be going like, "What's the difference? Which Bitcoin should I really get involved in, and why?" So why should someone look at Bitcoin Cash and go, this is where I should be paying attention versus Bitcoin, when Bitcoin, just to play devil's advocate, obviously I know a little bit more about these topics, but why should they be paying more attention to Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin when Bitcoin has the highest market cap right now?
Yeah, so in economics, there's a term called rational ignorance. And the idea behind rational ignorance is that sometimes it's rational to be ignorant on a specific topic. And the most common example of that is in electoral politics and with voting. And so in whatever country you can spend, hours and hours or days or even weeks or months studying all the different candidates or studying all the different ballot issues and this and that, and you can become really informed and knowledgeable about those topics. Yet your vote doesn't count any more than somebody that didn't spend any time studying the issues and has no clue about any of it at all. And so the idea behind rational ignorance is that it's rational for you to be ignorant on those topics, because even if you spend all the time and effort and the opportunity cost there of informing yourself on those topics, it doesn't improve your life at all, and that time would have been better spent on other things. And so when it comes to cryptocurrencies here, there's thousands of different cryptocurrencies at this point. If you want to, and if you're fulfilled by it and it's interesting to you, I suppose you could study them all and figure them all out and learn about all these different things. But that's probably not the best use of your time. And so if you look at the top couple of cryptocurrencies out there, you have the BTC version of Bitcoin, you have Ethereum, you have Ripple, and you have Bitcoin Cash. Those are the top four. And if you look at it, of those top four, let's take BTC and Bitcoin Cash, for example. Bitcoin Cash transactions are slow, expensive, and unreliable, but it has the most market cap and the most name recognition around the world. The Bitcoin Cash version has some name recognition. It has a lower market cap, but its transactions are super fast, super cheap, and super reliable and super easy to use. And it's accepted at just as many places, or maybe even more places, than the thing that everybody's calling Bitcoin at this point, the BTC version of Bitcoin. And so I would recommend to people out there, go ahead and give a try to both. And when you see that you paid maybe a 15th of a penny to make a transaction on Bitcoin Cash, and you paid $4 to make a transaction on the BTC version of Bitcoin, for me, that would be enough to know right there which one I would rather use. But people, make up your own mind. Decide for yourself. If you want to go with the guidance of experts, well, I've been in this space full time every waking moment for 8.5 years. Bitcoin Cash is clear in my mind. It's the better choice to bring more economic freedom to the world, and it's more useful to more people in more countries around the world because it's fast, cheap, and reliable. And if you had two versions of PayPal, one that's slow, expensive, and unreliable, and one that's fast, cheap, and reliable, like, you don't have to have a PhD in economics to figure out which one of those is going to be more popular in the long run. And basically, the BTC version of Bitcoin at this point, it's just riding on its own coattails and name recognition that was created by people like myself in the early days, driving adoption and driving businesses and driving things. And if you look at it, the vast majority of the early people that were pushing Bitcoin to be used in commerce in the world were all Bitcoin Cash supporters today. So, like Rick Falkving, the guy that wrote an essay back in, I think, 2012 about why he was investing his entire life savings into Bitcoin in 2012. Today, he's a big, giant Bitcoin Cash supporter. Myself, somewhere along the way, I earned the nickname Bitcoin Jesus, not just because I earned that nickname, because I was busy driving adoption and giving Bitcoin to people all over the world and showing them how to use it and building the tools so that people could use Bitcoin all over the world. That's how I got the nickname Bitcoin Jesus. Well, today I'm promoting the exact same version of Bitcoin I was promoting back then. It just has a different name today. Today it's called Bitcoin Cash. And if you look all around the world, these different businesses, the Blockchain.infos, the BitPays, the Coinbases, they're all great, big, giant fans of Bitcoin Cash with full Bitcoin Cash support. I think that's a pretty clear sign that in the future, I think Bitcoin Cash is going to surpass the BTC version of Bitcoin in both terms of market cap and adoption and name recognition and usage around the world. It's so clear for anybody that's paying attention. Maybe the executives at MySpace laughed at the idea that Facebook could ever, get more of a network effect and more traction. But when MySpace became, slow and unreliable for people to use, even though Facebook had a much smaller network effect, people still made the jump. And I think the same is true between the BTC version of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Cash version of Bitcoin. I think people are going to make the jump to Bitcoin Cash here once they figure out that Bitcoin Cash provides a better user experience.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can point out, if you're just a speculator and you're looking into cryptocurrencies because you want to make money, the key to being a good investor is to invest before everybody else does. So, like, I invested in Bitcoin when everybody was saying it's a scam and a Ponzi scheme and this and that, and they were $1 each. But I didn't listen to the naysayers. I thought for myself. I thought, no, Bitcoin enables fast, cheap, reliable payments anywhere in the world. People are going to use this as money. I'm going to invest in it before everybody else does. And sure enough, the price of Bitcoin went crazy. And so today it's the same thing. Bitcoin Cash is fast, cheap, reliable, and provides a better user experience than the BTC version of Bitcoin. And a lot of people on the internet are saying Bcash is a scam, Bcash is trash, Bcrash, and just a bunch of name calling. But like, name calling is not an argument. The argument is that Bitcoin Cash provides a better user experience with faster, cheaper, more reliable payments. So like, even though people are calling it a bunch of names on the internet, that doesn't matter. I'm investing my money into Bitcoin Cash today for the same reason I invested my money back into the BTC version of Bitcoin back in 2011. And I am very confident that in the not too distant future, Bitcoin Cash will have more merchant adoption, more usage, more and a higher price than the BTC version of Bitcoin. I don't know how soon that'll happen, but it's very clear that it will happen.
Just because Bitcoin has that, is the number one in terms of market cap. Just to echo Roger's words, if something is more usable, it is more reliable, and people are going to adopt it. And I love the MySpace Facebook analogy. That's pretty cool. It's a very, very simple way to
And don't
explain
forget
it.
about Friendster either, right? There was Friendster before MySpace. So
Let's talk about a little bit, because you mentioned there, if people are looking to be speculative and like make investments, because you are, as I stated right off the top, one of the world's first investors in Bitcoin related startups like Kraken, Purse.io, BitPay. For people that are interested in investing in businesses, cryptocurrencies, what's your kind of criteria and thought process of investing in certain projects? Like, how do you evaluate, okay, is this something I should put my money behind?
I look for things that are actually useful and that people would want to use and that solves a problem or improves people's lives in some way. And so, like, a great example of that is Purse.io. You can save 25% on purchases from Amazon. Everybody's shopping on Amazon already. Well, suddenly you can get another 20 or 25% discount on Amazon. Of course, people are going to use it. And, so if something's useful, people are going to use it. And if there's a way for the business that's providing that useful product to charge them for it, fantastic. You have a viable business. And that seems like something worth investing in.
Just to play devil's advocate here, because, and when I mean Bitcoin, obviously I mean Bitcoin Cash, or cryptocurrencies in general, because there are certain challenges that we face in terms of mass adoption. There's, as you said, there's bad actors in the space, people that are trying to hijack the good projects and maybe lead them down a bad path, kind of like what's happened with Bitcoin with the high fees. And so, for me, there are certain challenges such as bad actors in the space. There are security concerns, as we saw, like even recently with Binance being hacked. And then you've got the challenge of adoption. And then there's lots of people saying things like, oh, proof of work isn't efficient because it uses so much energy. The volatility as a currency, like how are we going to use something that's so volatile as a currency if it goes up and down every week by, 50% or 100%? So how do you think we're going to, I know that I just gave you a few of the key core challenges, but how do you think we're going to overcome those, some of those things?
Yeah, so we have to build all the tools to solve those problems. So, anytime there's a problem, that's an opportunity to solve it. And so we're starting to see that. So, you already have all sorts of advanced financial trading instruments on top of Bitcoin Cash and others where you have puts and calls to hedge your volatility risk and all sorts of things happening. So, anytime you see any problem in the world, that's a business opportunity to solve it. And so, yeah, all those things you mentioned are problems, but they're also opportunities. And we're seeing all sorts of businesses arise out of solving those problems.
Hmm. And in terms of Bitcoin Cash, I've seen incredible development. That you've got this like, I think Gabriel Cardone calls it the Tocambrian explosion, right? So, what exciting things are happening on Bitcoin Cash now? What's been the, I guess, the latest developments that maybe people that don't follow the space super closely should be thinking about or should hear about?
Yeah, so of course, this Tocambrian explosion, where we're seeing all sorts of tokens starting to happen on top of Bitcoin Cash, and including some from some publicly traded companies are coming as well on top of Bitcoin Cash. So that's a really big deal. I'm also really excited about the fungibility coming back to Bitcoin Cash. So in the early days of Bitcoin, everybody thought that it was completely anonymous, and then later they thought it was pseudo anonymous, and today they realize that it's really not private at all. But Bitcoin, one of the things that makes money money is fungibility. If I hand you a $20 bill or a 20-pound note, it doesn't matter who had it before, right? You don't need or want to know where it came from previously. The same needs to be true of cryptocurrencies. Otherwise, they're not fungible as a currency. So now Bitcoin Cash has this tool called Cash Shuffle. If you go to cashshuffle.com, you can download the wallet right now that allows you to shuffle up your Bitcoin Cash with a bunch of other people's. And in fact, I went to bed last night with a bunch of Bitcoin Cash in a wallet. And when I woke up this morning, it had all been shuffled just like that. And we're about to integrate that same Cash Shuffle thing into the Bitcoin.com wallet. So if you install the Bitcoin.com wallet as well, you'll have privacy and fungibility with your Bitcoin Cash as well, because it'll help shuffle up your Bitcoin Cash with other people. So that's a really, really big deal that the BTC version of Bitcoin no longer has on that network, because the fees are too high for you to shuffle up your coins on the Bitcoin BTC network. And so that's really, really exciting to see that happen as well. And then, of course, there's just the announcement yesterday from Flexa that you can pay with Bitcoin Cash at, I think, 30 something thousand merchants in the US, places like Starbucks and Whole Foods and a bunch of others. So 30,000 merchants you can use Bitcoin Cash at in the United States now, thanks to the guys over at Flexa. And that's another amazing thing. And then we have thousands of merchants in Japan later this year will be rolling out Bitcoin Cash payments to directly. But we already have these awesome apps for both Android and iOS called Bitcoin Cash Register, where without any registration or sign up at all, you can easily and safely accept Bitcoin Cash at your physical shop as well. And so there's just all sorts of actual adoption in commerce happening all over the world, which is what previously was happening on the BTC chain. And then that adoption ground to a halt when the fees became high and the network became congested with its slow, expensive, unreliable payments. But all of that enthusiasm and adoption and creation is still taking place on Bitcoin Cash now. So it's really exciting watching all that happen.
And for those people who are listening and they're excited by the prospect of cryptocurrencies now, what's the easiest way for them to get involved, say, in Bitcoin Cash?
I'm mildly biased, but if I do say so myself, Bitcoin.com is an awesome website with all sorts of awesome things to do and all sorts of great ways to learn about it. And in fact, we give away about 10 cents worth of free Bitcoin Cash to anybody that goes and downloads a wallet. If you go to free.bitcoin.com, if you don't have any cryptocurrency already, that's one of the easiest ways to get some for free, just like that. And that's a great resource to start learning about it. And then, of course, Google is your friend as well. Just go and start Googling and reading about this. But don't send your cryptocurrency to strangers on the internet, right? You'll see all sorts of websites promising, oh, send us your Bitcoin and we'll send you back twice as much a half hour later. Don't believe them. If it's too good to be true, it probably is.
In your life, you've definitely gone through ups and downs. And I think you have this resilience. And I've been there, through some of the tough times at bitcoin.com. And just like hearing your story and hearing you share certain things, it's clear to me that you've been through a lot of adversity. So how what's your kind of mindset when you're going through something tough or that you need to push through, or like, oh, there's a huge dip in the market and everyone's calling it like the crypto apocalypse or whatever? Like, what's your mindset there? What keeps you going?
uh, I guess in regards to the price of the cryptocurrencies, to me, the price is the least interesting thing. The price is just the side effect of the actual adoption and usage in commerce. And so, if you want to see the price go up, you have to drive as much adoption in actual commerce and actual usage as you possibly can. And so like the price is just, I don't know, the thermometer of the adoption that you're getting in commerce. But in the short term, the it can fluctuate a lot, but in the long term, the price is just the indicator of how much adoption you managed to get in commerce. So I, I I rarely pay attention to the price. The price for me is not the interesting thing. It's the what problems can we solve for people in the world with Bitcoin Cash? Can we, let's build the tools to solve those problems? And one that we're launching on June 4th here is local.bitcoin.com. It will allow anyone to buy or sell Bitcoin Cash in any country for any payment method, and you don't have. Sorry, you don't have to give. See, I get so excited about it, I shove my phone right off the table. Local.bitcoin.com allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin Cash with any payment method in any country, and you don't have to give us your ID or your any KYC AML documents at all to us. We're never going to ask for any of that, and so that's a really, really, really big deal, I think. And and that's an example of like that's going to drive the long term price. If we get a whole bunch of people trading and using Bitcoin Cash as money, the price of Bitcoin Cash will go up. But the price of Bitcoin Cash going up is a side effect of getting that adoption in commerce.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree with you. Don't, long term the price will go up as adoption increases, as more people use it. Don't unless you're a day trader, there's no point in being obsessed with how much the price is this hour or that hour. It's just a complete.
And unless you really know what you're doing, it's probably bad advice to become a day trader.
Exactly, right. It's a dangerous trap to fall into. And the past couple years or the past year and a half, you've really seen people get burnt by that mentality of like thinking that cryptocurrencies is some get rich quick thing. That's not what it's about. There's much deeper reasons to be involved in this space and to share cryptocurrencies and help cryptocurrencies be adopted. But I don't think like this, that some people are advocating it as this like, oh, okay, if you invest in Bitcoin in 6 months, you're going to be like a multi-millionaire or whatever. I think that's quite a negative, harmful attitude to the cryptocurrency space, because then it brings new people in because they're excited by it, but then when it doesn't work out for them, they're kind of burnt by the experience, and then that's why there's a lot of bad press essentially. So do you have, just again coming back to the more human element of like Roger Ver? I know that you kind of alluded to this earlier, that you were in federal prison. How did that come about? What happened there, and what did you learn from that experience?
What did I learn from that experience? First and foremost, prison is not fun. It's not somewhere you want to go. If you can avoid going there, avoid it. The other thing I learned is that America doesn't have free speech. They teach everybody growing up, oh, America, freedom of speech. Absolute lie. Uh, if you say anything that the powers that be don't like, they'll come after you. And yeah, don't believe in the whole freedom of speech thing. It's not true. Um, and I guess that people can read about all the details of the super short version. Is I sold firecrackers on eBay. Back when eBay had a guns and ammo section, you could literally buy assault rifles on eBay. Back when I was selling this product, so I sold a store bought firecracker on eBay, and wound up being the only person in the entire country to be prosecuted for selling those. And even while I was in federal prison, the company that I had been buying them from and the manufacturer was still manufacturing and selling the exact same product with no permit. And I was the only person, again, prosecuted for selling those without a permit. And it wasn't because of what I had sold; it was because of what I had said. And if I hadn't been, making political speeches in regards to how the government's retarding the rate of economic growth of the entire world, and we don't even need an ATF or an FBI, and they're causing more harm than good, and they're murdering people and doing all sorts of horrible things. If I hadn't been saying things like that, I wouldn't have had any problem at all with the firecracker
Do
sales.
you ever worry that like the government are gonna single you out because you are really outspoken? You're libertarian, and you believe in voluntarism, and you've been very, very outspoken. You're giving speeches. Um, y- do you ever worry that you're going to be the target of not not some assassination attempt or anything like that, but some public smear attempt, or that they're going to just shut down Bitcoin.com and make it incredibly hard for you to operate? Do you ever worry about that at all?
Yeah, every day. I'm calling it now. I think of course the government's going to attack me and the things we're trying to do. If if you're undermining their ability to control people, and these are people who want to control other people, they're going to try and control you too.
And, just as we kind of head towards wrapping up now, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to, how do you want people to remember you, or how do you want people to, kind of think about what you've done in this space?
Yeah, I think I'd want my legacy to just be someone who helped build the tools to enable more economic freedom in the world. And I think, once we have superhuman intelligences, I think they'll be able to see that like more economic freedom leads to more economic growth, leads to a better world for everybody. So I hope to go down in history as one of the people that helped speed up the rate of progress of the human race. And, because I want to live in a better world myself. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Roger. As you know, I'm a huge advocate of what you do, and I'll always be recommending Bitcoin Cash and using Bitcoin Cash where I can. And I'm really excited to see the developments happen and your growing presence, your growing voice. So yeah, thank you very much. Where can people find out about you, about your projects? Where's like the best place for them to follow you?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin.com, that's my life's work at the moment. So we're building all these awesome tools, and go to Bitcoin.com to learn more. I have a little bit of information on RogerVere.com, but not as much. I think my voice is fading, so thank you so much, Michael.
No, thank you very much, Roger. Appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode, please go over to iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify, subscribe to us. If you think we deserve a 5-star rating, then please leave us a rating. We also have exclusive show notes and bonus content over at whosgoingtostopme.com, so I highly recommend you check that out. For daily lessons and nuggets of advice, please head over to our Instagram @StopMePodcast. Until next time.